Before we delve into the secrets of the Villisca axe murder house, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any mysterious tales and timeless true stories. If you're watching from home, work, or anywhere else, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. It's amazing to see how every corner of the world connects with these stories. Villisca's old house in the heart of Iowa always had a presence that made neighbors avert their gaze. The windows, now dark and dusty, reflected little of the daylight, and the wind that passed through the corners of the house seemed to carry whispers of the past. That residence, built at the end of the 19th century, was more than wood and brick. It was a time capsule holding secrets that most would never dare to imagine. Eleanor Hughes, a young historian fascinated by unsolved cases, arrived in town with a backpack full of equipment and a quiet determination. Her goal was clear: to document the village's history and investigate sightings without letting herself be swayed by superstition. But something about the atmosphere of the Villisca axe murder house felt different. There wasn't just curiosity, there was a sense of observation, as if the house itself knew her and calculated her every move. The door creaked as Eleanor pushed it open, and the scent of old wood mixed with dust filled her nostrils. Each room was a testament to interrupted time. In one bedroom, the furniture remained untouched, covered in yellowed sheets. In another, stains of dried blood told a silent and terrible story. She knew, even before looking at the historical documents she carried, that this house held more than memories. It held the echo of a violence that could not be simply explained. Outside, the local sheriff, Samuel Carter, watched the young woman arrive with a suspicious look. Carter knew every inch of the town's history, and knew that Eleanor's curiosity could bring to light truths he preferred to keep buried. He had witnessed strange accounts, unexplained lights, noises in the middle of the night, shadows that appeared and disappeared. But the reality was darker than any superficial account could suggest. As Eleanor walked through the corridors, she noticed deep marks in the wood, scars that seemed to form patterns. The silence was broken only by the echo of her own footsteps, but there was another presence, subtle, insistent, watching from an invisible point. Instinct told her that this was not just a historical investigation. It was a dive into something alive, something that refused to remain dead. At the back of the house, a room had remained locked since the original incident, known to the residents as the Blade Room. Carter had always warned, "Never go in there. It's not for the curious." But Eleanor, driven by an investigative impulse, felt the need to defy that warning. There was something there that needed to be documented, and she couldn't ignore it. The tension built with each step toward the locked door. Meanwhile, outside, a storm was brewing on the horizon. The heavy clouds cast a dark light that seemed to embrace the house, enveloping every detail in an aura of mystery and menace. Distant thunder rumbled like a warning drum, but Eleanor was too immersed in the present to fully notice the danger. Upon opening the door, the metallic smell of old iron mingled with the mold of the locked room. Each object there seemed preserved not only by time, but by an invisible force guarding secrets that should never be revealed. A chilling sensation ran down her spine. She was no longer just in a historic house. She was in a place that seemed to decide on its own who could enter and leave. Without realizing it, Eleanor was crossing the thin line between scientific curiosity and something far more dangerous. With each detail she observed, the house seemed to react, whispering stories it didn't want to hear, revealing scars that couldn't be erased. The past and present intertwined, and what had begun as a historical investigation was rapidly becoming a dance with the unknown. The small town of Villisca breathed history in every cobblestone street and in every Victorian house that still resisted the passage of time. The residents knew the bloody past of the famous residence, but few dared to speak of it. The legends surrounding the house were told only in whispers, accompanied by nervous glances and trembling hands. For Eleanor, the fascination lay precisely in this contrast. The town lived normally, but carried a secret that silently corroded its routine. The historian found support in Maggie Whitaker, a local librarian who possessed rare archives and never-before digitized documents. Maggie, a woman with grey hair and a stern expression, was a guardian of the town's memories. She knew details about the Villisca axe murder house that no one else remembered, from family diaries to yellowed newspaper clippings. Some secrets weren't meant to survive, Maggie said, handing over a leather-bound volume with fragile pages. But others insist on staying alive. Sheriff Samuel Carter, for his part, had a skeptical yet protective gaze. Born and raised in Villisca, he carried within him a mixture of respect and fear for the town's history. He didn't fully trust strangers, especially curious young people like Eleanor, but he understood the importance of historical documentation. At the same time, he knew that certain events were not explainable by logic. The lights, the sounds, the whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and that the house somehow possessed a consciousness of its own. The Villisca axe murder house itself was a silent but ever-present character. Every wall, every creaking floorboard, and every crack in the ceiling told fragments of a violent story. The worn curtains swayed with every breath of wind, casting shadows that danced in almost human patterns. The heavy atmosphere wasn't just a figment of the imagination. Past visitors reported chills, a feeling of being watched and, in some cases, visions that no one could explain. Eleanor felt that every object there held a latent memory, waiting to be awakened. The town also had its own secondary characters who enriched the narrative. The local baker, Thomas Granger, recalled family stories about the events of 1912, adding small details that went unnoticed in official records. He spoke cautiously, but always cast a furtive glance at the house, as if his words could once again evoke the tragic events. Lena Harper, a high school teacher, was fascinated by urban legends and, without realizing it, encouraged young people to explore horror stories. Her presence reinforced the town's duality. Everyday normalcy, interspersed with macabre memories. Culturally, Villisca reflected the blend of traditions of the American Midwest, community festivals, religious gatherings, and school events that held the town together. But the house in question was a constant reminder that even seemingly peaceful places hold dark histories. Eleanor realized that any step in the investigation should consider these cultural nuances, respecting the trauma of the surviving families, understanding the weight of collective memory, and yet challenging the silence that everyone maintained out of fear or resignation. As Eleanor explored the rooms, she also began to notice patterns that escaped a superficial glance. Small details in the furniture, arrangements of objects, and almost invisible inscriptions on the walls suggested deliberate intentions to preserve the memory of something terrible. The combination of historical architecture and signs of ancient violence created an environment where past and present intertwined in a disturbing way. Each encounter with the residents deepened the feeling that the entire town was complicit in an unspoken secret. Eleanor wasn't just investigating a haunted house. She was unraveling a web of collective memories, fears, and taboos that shaped life there. And the deeper she delved, the more evident it became that the Villisca axe murder house wasn't just a physical location. It was a hub of stories, invisible presences, and mysteries that defied reason. As Eleanor delved deeper into the archives and corridors of the Villisca axe murder house, the line between history and reality began to blur. She uncovered old accounts, letters, and diaries from residents at the time of the 1912 massacre, describing not only the tragic events, but also strange behaviors preceding the tragedy. Doors that closed on their own, shadows that seemed to follow people, and whispers that no one could explain. These details made the investigation dangerous, as each piece of evidence suggested that the past still held a living power within the house. The first major obstacle arose when Eleanor decided to explore the attic, a space no one in town dared to visit. The stairs creaked under her weight, and when she turned on her flashlight, she discovered a jumble of the victim's personal belongings. Clothes stored in boxes, children's toys and torn letters, some still stained with blood. An intense chill ran down her spine, and for a moment she had the feeling that she wasn't alone. A sudden noise, like a door slamming downstairs, made her heart race. Samuel Carter, the sheriff, now appeared not only as a guardian of the law, but as a silent warning. The house had its own rules, and defying them could be risky. While exploring the lower floor, Eleanor began to notice strange patterns in the blade marks and cracks in the floor. The evidence seemed to indicate that the events of 1912 were not random. There was intent, calculation, and perhaps a presence manipulating the environment to leave coded messages. Each discovery increased her fascination, but also placed her in danger. Maggie, the librarian, warned, "Don't try to decipher everything on your own. There are things that reason cannot grasp, and some truths can be lethal." The emotional conflict also intensified. Eleanor felt a mixture of curiosity and fear, while Samuel, who initially distrusted her scientific motivation, began to realize that his protection might not be enough. The tension between them grew as he saw her as a threat to the city's safety, while she saw him as a barrier to accessing the truth. This dynamic added layers to the conflict, transforming the investigation into a subtle psychological duel where every decision carried real risks. The physical obstacles in the house multiplied. Doors that locked themselves, windows that banged shut without wind, and objects that moved from their places. Eleanor began to document each occurrence, but the feeling of being watched made every step an agonizing experience. There were moments when the lights inexplicably failed, revealing shadows that moved at impossible angles. Each phenomenon added tension to the narrative and deepened the mystery of the house. Furthermore, the town was beginning to intervene, albeit indirectly. Neighbors who had previously seemed indifferent now cast worried glances when Eleanor passed by. Whispered comments reached her ears, suggesting that perhaps it would be better to abandon the investigation. Social pressure became a source of conflict. Not only did she face the mysteries of the house, but also the resistance of a community that preferred to remain silent. The escalation of the conflict reached its peak when Eleanor found a diary hidden behind a false wall in the attic. In it, one of the previous victims recounted visions of a male figure with an axe who appeared intermittently and seemed to manipulate the family's fate. This revelation suggested that the house's past was not merely a record of crime, but an ongoing plot of terror and manipulation. The line between reality and the supernatural began to blur, leaving Eleanor in a constant state of alert and vulnerability. The secondary characters also intensified the conflict. Maggie insisted that Eleanor be careful, Samuel showed clear signs of impatience, and the entire town seemed to conspire to prevent the full discovery of the truth. Each interaction reinforced the tension, as new layers of story and emotion emerged, inextricably linking past and present. The conflict was no longer just about uncovering historical facts. It had become a struggle between curiosity and fear, science and superstition, individuality and community protection. Eleanor was confronted with forces that defied her logic, while the house became an active character, reacting to each action with menacing subtlety. Each step taken heightened the suspense and created new complications, setting the stage for the development of subplots and increasing narrative pressure. As Eleanor continued her investigation, she realized she wasn't just dealing with the Villisca axe murder house, but also with the complex personal histories of the town's residents. Each supporting character carried their own fears and secrets, which intertwined with the events in the house, making the narrative more intricate and unpredictable. Maggie, the librarian, revealed to Eleanor the existence of uncatalogued letters from descendants of the victims. These letters recounted disturbing dreams and inexplicable encounters that family members had experienced over the decades. Some reported hearing footsteps or seeing shadows in empty rooms. Others described figures appearing in mirrors or suddenly emerging from corners of the house. Each testimony added a layer of complexity, showing that the house influenced the life of the community in a continuous and invisible way. Sheriff Samuel Carter also faced internal tension. Although his job was to protect the town and maintain order, he carried a secret. The tragedy at the house had affected his own family. He remembered stories told by his grandfather, who witnessed the days following the massacre. This personal connection made his vigilance over Eleanor more intense, but also created ethical and emotional conflicts. He wanted to protect the historian, but at the same time felt that any revelation could further shake the town. While exploring the house, Eleanor discovered signs of recent activity, even though no one lived there. Footprints in fine dust, handprints and objects out of place indicated that someone or something was still interacting with the environment. This discovery brought a new tension. She didn't know if she was facing a human intruder or if she was truly confronted with inexplicable phenomena. The suspense increased, and every movement inside the house required extreme caution. Interactions with the local residents also created emotional subplots. Lena Harper, a local teacher, showed curiosity about Eleanor's discoveries, but her childlike enthusiasm put the young investigator in danger. By insisting on following parts of the investigation, Lena provoked conflicts about safety, responsibility, and boundaries. This secondary plot added tension and urgency, showing that exploring the story was not merely intellectual, but also involved concrete risks for everyone involved. On a social level, the town began to indirectly pressure Eleanor. Rumors about her investigation spread rapidly, causing veiled resistance and suspicious glances. Some families avoided contact with her, while others left subtle warnings for her to stop her search. This subplot highlights that the main conflict didn't exist only within the house, but permeated the entire community, creating a network of silent opposition that made the protagonist's mission even more difficult. Another emerging subplot involved the Villisca axe murder house itself. Objects shifting position and inexplicable sounds suggested that the house had an active memory, reacting not only to Eleanor, but to any intrusion. The combination of physical and psychological phenomena meant that each discovery brought new questions, maintaining the fast pace and constant suspense. Each scene contributed to the main arc, showing that the mystery of the house could not be isolated from the lives it touched. Time pressure also came into play. Eleanor discovered that a historical fair in the city would be taking place in a few days, bringing curious visitors to the area around the house. The need to document everything before the presence of strangers, altered evidence, added urgency to the narrative. Every step needed to be calculated, every document analyzed quickly as time became a silent enemy, intensifying the conflict and reinforcing the atmosphere of tension and danger. Finally, small clues from the past connected to the subplots. Old photographs showed figures in strange positions. Reports of mysterious disappearances surfaced from municipal archives, and private documents from local families suggested that the events of 1912 were merely the culmination of a chain of dark incidents. These connections created a complex web, intertwining past and present, mystery and reality, setting the stage for the turning point that would completely change the course of history. In the early hours before the city's historical fair, Eleanor decided to document every detail of the Villisca axe murder house before the visitors arrived. The air was heavy, laden with an eerie stillness, broken only by the wind whistling through the cracks in the windows. The feeling of being watched became almost unbearable, and each step echoed through the corridors as if the house itself were whispering silent warnings. While examining the master bedroom, Eleanor noticed something she had overlooked, a small opening in the wall, hidden behind an old wardrobe. She carefully pushed the piece of furniture aside, revealing a secret compartment. Inside, she found an old diary, but not just any diary. The pages were written in handwriting that blended personal memories and accounts of strange events, detailing that the events of 1912 were not impulsive, but planned by someone within the community itself. While leafing through the diary, a letter fell out from between the pages. It wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, but it contained instructions for manipulating people's perceptions, creating fear, and keeping secrets buried. Eleanor realized that the massacre hadn't been just an isolated crime, but part of a web of manipulation that spanned generations. The house, with its creaks, shadows, and inexplicable phenomena, seemed to serve as a guardian of this truth, reacting to attempts at discovery with frightening subtlety. At that moment, Samuel Carter appeared, silent, as if he had anticipated her move. His eyes revealed a mixture of concern and surprise. "You found this. It shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Eleanor, still absorbing the gravity of the discovery, realized that the sheriff held personal secrets connected to the tragedy. He revealed that his own family had ties to the original events, and that the house, in a way, was a silent witness to a conspiracy that no one had been able to fully understand. The revelation transformed Eleanor's investigation. Until then, she had only sought to document the story and understand the inexplicable phenomena. Now she was facing a truth involving betrayal, manipulation, and psychological control over the entire community. This turning point caused the story to cease being merely about hauntings and become a study of the boundaries between fear, power, and collective memory. While she tried to process this information, the house began to manifest itself more intensely. Doors slammed shut, windows banged violently, and an inexplicable chill ran through the main hallway. Eleanor felt that every object reacted to the tension, as if the house itself were assessing her resolve and courage. Samuel helped her stay calm, but the realization that something invisible was manipulating the environment heightened the suspense and the immediate danger. At that moment, a shadow crossed the hallway in an impossible way, not just a reflection or play of light, but a clearly defined figure that disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Eleanor understood that the past was still alive within the house, not only in memories or records, but in forces that directly influenced anyone who dared to unearth secrets. This unexpected manifestation intensified the conflict, showing that the investigation could not proceed as before. Each step required extreme caution. Tensions intensified further when Eleanor and Samuel discovered an additional room behind a false panel, revealing objects belonging to the families involved in the massacre. Photographs, letters, and personal items suggested that some families held secrets that shaped the collective perception of the tragedy. Discovering this connection between living residents and the historical crime completely transformed the narrative. The mystery was not just about the house, but about the entire town, its relationships, and hidden histories. The turning point solidified the idea that the Villisca axe murder house was not just a haunted house, it was a core of intergenerational memories, manipulations, and secrets. Eleanor realized that the line between past and present was irreversibly blurred, and that any decision made from that moment on would have unpredictable consequences for everyone involved. The emotional impact of that moment was also intense. Eleanor faced fear, curiosity, and responsibility. Samuel struggled between protecting the town and allowing the truth to come to light. Maggie, even from a distance, warned of the risks, and the residents began to feel the weight of the impending discoveries. The story had changed direction. From a historical investigation to a psychological and mysterious thriller in which each character would need to deal with revelations that challenged their own perception of reality. Dawn broke over Villisca with a cold, pale light that seemed to highlight every detail of the town. But for Eleanor, Samuel, and Maggie, the morning's clarity contrasted sharply with the inner turmoil caused by the previous night's discoveries. The truth about the Villisca axe murder house not only redefined the historical perception of everyone involved, but also created immediate pressure to confront the ramifications of secrets that had remained buried for over a century. Eleanor felt the weight of responsibility upon her. Each document, each object, and each clue now had far greater implications than mere historical curiosities. Revealing these secrets could shock the city, generate fear, distrust, and even conflict among families who had tried to bury their connections to the tragedy. The investigator realized that her role was not merely that of an observer, but of a mediator between the past and the present, a role that demanded a delicate balance between truth and protection. Samuel Carter, the sheriff, reacted with a mixture of frustration and relief. On the one hand, he knew that Eleanor's investigation could cause chaos in the community. On the other, the revelation that part of the house's mystery was linked to family secrets gave meaning to his own caution. Now, he needed to deal with a double tension, protecting the town from the emotional impact of the discoveries and ensuring that the story was accurately documented. This internal struggle transformed Samuel from a mere protector into an active participant in a broader emotional and social conflict. Meanwhile, the city began to show subtle signs of reaction. Small groups of residents commented on the activity at the house, exchanging nervous glances and whispering old stories. Some recalled events they had previously considered insignificant, connecting them to the phenomena reported at the residence. The Villisca axe murder house, which had once seemed an isolated space, was now becoming a catalyst that united scattered memories, revealing a network of recollections that shaped the collective perception of the past and present. Among the individual reactions, Maggie stood out as a balanced voice. The librarian recognized that the city could not remain in ignorance, but also warned about the dangers of premature disclosure. She helped Eleanor organize the evidence so that it could be carefully analyzed, avoiding hasty interpretations that could fuel rumors or cause unnecessary fear. The subplot of protecting knowledge and controlling the historical narrative became crucial to maintaining tension without losing the thread of the story. On a personal level, Eleanor faced intense internal conflicts. The scientific excitement that had motivated her to investigate the house clashed with the real fear of the inexplicable manifestations and the emotional responsibility for the inhabitants. Each physical discovery, handprints, displaced objects, visible shadows, now had deeper emotional repercussions. The line between investigation and personal experience of terror was blurred, making every step in the house an exercise in courage and judgment. The turning point also brought practical consequences. Samuel and Eleanor needed to decide how to handle the Villisca axe murder house before the historical fair that would attract curious visitors. Any public exposure could trigger unpredictable reactions, ranging from collective fear to conflicts between families still carrying painful memories. The urgency to document and protect evidence created a fast pace, intensifying the narrative tension and making the story more dynamic. Furthermore, the emotional complexity between the characters deepened. Samuel saw Eleanor as an ally, but also as a threat to the stability of the community. Eleanor, realizing the depth of her family's connections to historical events, felt increasingly responsible for her actions. Maggie acted as a mediator and guide, balancing emotional and historical pressures. These interconnected reactions increased the density of the conflict, keeping the reader immersed in the psychological tension that permeated the plot. Finally, the Villisca axe murder house seemed to react to every movement. The atmosphere remained unstable. Doors moved, shadows danced, and inexplicable noises echoed through the corridors. But now, these manifestations were not merely mystery or terror. They were direct consequences of the characters' discoveries and presence. The house became a silent protagonist, showing that every action within its walls had an immediate effect, connecting past and present in an almost conscious way. After the devastating events of the previous night, Eleanor felt she could no longer hesitate. Every step inside the Villisca Axe murder house demanded courage, strategy, and resilience. The young historian understood that, to truly grasp the house's secrets, she would need to confront not only the strange phenomena, but also the emotional and ethical dilemmas that the discoveries brought. Eleanor's first challenge was accepting that the house was not merely an object of study. Every creaking hallway, every shadow, and every displaced object were active manifestations of preserved memories and traumas. She realized that treating the investigation as a neutral historical analysis would be insufficient. It was necessary to understand the house almost as a living organism, capable of influencing emotions, manipulating perceptions, and testing human limits. This understanding completely changed her approach, making it more cautious and reflective, but also more decisive. The interaction with Samuel Carter intensified. The sheriff, previously reluctant, came to trust Eleanor's ability to handle critical situations, but established clear boundaries to protect both the investigator and the community. This forced collaboration created space for mutual growth. Eleanor learned to balance curiosity and prudence, while Samuel recognized that hiding the truth could be as harmful as revealing it. Their relationship became a tense but necessary alliance, grounded in mutual respect and the urgency of the mission. Maggie continued to serve as a guide, helping Eleanor organize and interpret documents and clues more systematically. The librarian's role was crucial in helping Eleanor learn to prioritize information, distinguishing significant facts from distractions and legends that intertwined with reality. This learning increased the protagonist's confidence in her own abilities, showing that growth also comes from meticulous preparation and analysis, not just courage in the face of danger. New challenges arose when Eleanor decided to directly confront the phenomena in the house. During a nighttime inspection, she positioned herself in one of the most unsettling hallways, the same one where shadows had manifested. With strategically placed flashlights and cameras to record any activity, she faced her fear head-on. Every strange noise, every door slamming shut on its own, every invisible whisper was met with patience and determination. This active stance transformed Eleanor from an observer into a conscious participant, shifting the narrative from passive investigation to decisive action. The protagonist's growth was also emotional. She began to understand the depth of the historical trauma and the empathy needed to deal with the families in the city. By talking to descendants of the victims, Eleanor realized that the truth was not just academic knowledge, but a bridge to healing old and silenced memories. This awareness strengthened her determination. It was not enough to record history. It was necessary to honor it, even in the face of fear and social resistance. Furthermore, overcoming the challenge included the ability to decipher complex patterns within the house. Observing the marks on the floor, furniture arrangements, and subtle signs on the walls, Eleanor began to reconstruct sequences of events that had gone unnoticed for generations. Each discovery increased her confidence, showing that human logic, combined with careful observation and courage, could penetrate even the darkest mysteries. The peak of her growth occurred when Eleanor realized that the Villisca Axe murder house tested not only her courage, but also her ability to maintain clarity amidst the chaos. Physical phenomena, emotional memories, and social pressures intertwined in an almost labyrinthine complexity. The protagonist learned to balance analysis, action, and intuition, showing that personal evolution is not linear. It requires constant adaptation and the courage to face both the external world and internal fears. At the end of this period of overcoming challenges, Eleanor was no longer just the curious investigator who had arrived in town. She had transformed into a protagonist capable of handling extreme situations, understanding human and historical complexity, and confronting forces that defy rational explanation. Her growth was also reflected in the town. Samuel and the residents began to trust that, despite their fear, there was someone capable of facing the secrets of the Villisca axe murder house with responsibility and courage. With her understanding of the Villisca axe murder house and its secrets growing, Eleanor knew she could no longer postpone the final confrontation. Each recent discovery indicated that something bigger was about to be revealed. A force or manipulation that transcended the time and space of the house itself. Tension in the town was also rising. Comments from residents, suspicious glances, and constant whispers reminded everyone that the investigation was no longer an isolated effort, but an event involving the entire community. That afternoon, Eleanor gathered Samuel and Maggie to devise a detailed plan. They needed to document every phenomenon, record physical and psychological evidence, and protect the visitors to the historical fair who would arrive in a few days. The city acted as a pressure point. Every decision needed to be precise, as any mistake could cause chaos or compromise the credibility of the investigation. The need for preparation heightened the suspense and the narrative urgency. While organizing equipment, Eleanor noticed a pattern in the reported phenomena. Physical manifestations from the house, doors slamming, shadows moving, objects shifting, occurred in response to attempts to uncover the truth or confront the past. Each action had a direct reaction from the house, almost as if it were testing the determination and courage of whoever dared to unravel its secrets. This realization led the protagonist to refine her approach, making each move strategic and calculated, but still risky. The secondary characters also played crucial roles during this period. Maggie organized historical documents linking past events to living residents, ensuring that the truth emerged in a structured way. Samuel monitored the city and restricted access for curious onlookers, balancing security and trust. Lena Harper, who had previously been curious and impulsive, began to act as logistical support, following Eleanor's precise instructions. Each character contributed to making the preparation for the climax meticulous, yet still fraught with tension, as any failure could have serious consequences. The emotional pressure increased with each passing hour. Eleanor realized that the fear stemmed not only from the house, but also from the responsibilities she carried. Revealing the truth or confronting the mysteries of the house meant challenging decades of silence and confronting families who had tried to bury the horrors of 1912. The narrative tension reached its peak, preparing the reader for the imminent climax, where all the elements of the story, past, present, characters and phenomena, would converge. While reviewing the secret diary and family documents, Eleanor began to notice connections that escaped superficial analysis. Certain letters, photographs, and accounts showed patterns of manipulation and the continued presence of someone or something influencing events since the massacre. Every detail now had a clear function in preparing for the final confrontation, and the need for immediate action heightened the sense of urgency. The Villisca axe murder house, silent and imposing, seemed to react to the approaching decisive moment. Doors creaked as if breathing, shadows cast more intensely, and the heavy air made each of Eleanor's steps feel heavier. Every corridor, every room seemed to test her, demanding courage, attention, and resilience. The house itself became both antagonist and setting, uniting physical and psychological elements in a final test of determination. Subtle signs indicated that the impending revelation could change not only historical understanding, but also the residents' perception of their own families and histories. Eleanor understood that the climax would not only be confronting supernatural phenomena or analyzing evidence, but dealing with human complexity, fear, distrust, guilt, and the responsibility of revealing or protecting the truth. In practical terms, the preparation involved the strategic placement of cameras, flashlights, audio recordings, and surveillance at key points in the house. Each movement was calculated to record events that could confirm or refute hypotheses, but also to minimize risks to the characters. The narrative tension was kept high, alternating between detailed planning, observation of phenomena, and the emotional impacts on those involved. At the end of this preparation phase, Eleanor, Samuel, and Maggie were ready, not only prepared with equipment and plans, but also mentally aligned to face the unknown. The climax would not only be a sequence of surprising events, but the point where past, present, secrets, and courage would converge. Every detail, every decision, and every interaction made up to that point culminated in this moment, establishing the perfect setting for the final confrontation. Night finally fell on Villisca, bringing a heavy darkness that seemed to embrace the town and the Villisca axe murder house in a cloak of unsettling silence. Eleanor, Samuel, and Maggie strode together down the main hallway, equipped with flashlights, cameras, and recorders. Each step echoed off the ancient floorboards, and each shadow cast by the dancing lights heightened the feeling that the house was watching them. Upon entering the master bedroom, Eleanor realized something was different. The air vibrated almost palpably, as if the house were aware of her presence and purpose. Objects began to move gently, doors opening and closing in almost rhythmic patterns. Eleanor understood at that moment that the Villisca axe murder house did not react randomly. Everything was a calculated response to the actions of those who dared to confront its past. The first significant manifestation occurred when a shadow materialized in the corner of the room. It wasn't a simple projection of light, but a defined shape resembling the figure described in the diaries, a man with an axe, moving in an almost human way, yet impossible to capture in its entirety. Eleanor felt an intense chill, but maintained her composure. She positioned the camera, documenting every detail, while Samuel held the door to prevent any unwitting visitors from approaching. At that moment, the most impactful revelation emerged. Eleanor discovered that the figure was not merely an echo of the past, but a manifestation of the hidden intentions of the families involved, a presence formed by repressed memories, fears, and traumas that had accumulated over generations. The house had become a receptacle for these energies, amplifying them and making them visible to those determined to confront them. This realization changed the narrative. The mystery was not only historical, but also psychological and supernatural, involving all the characters and the entire town. Tension reached its peak when objects began flying through the hallways, doors slammed shut, and shadows appeared in multiple locations simultaneously. Eleanor reacted with direct action, following patterns she had identified during preparation. Moving strategically, she managed to neutralize the points of manifestation, meticulously recording everything. Samuel, in turn, protected the external area and mediated contact with residents who tried to approach, while Maggie monitored the movement of the documented energies, helping to anticipate patterns and avoid accidents. The final twist came when Eleanor found a hidden room behind the main closet, a space that no previous record mentioned. Inside, letters, diaries, and personal belongings revealed the extent of the intergenerational manipulation. The tragedy of 1912 had not been just an isolated crime, but a sequence of choices and secrets that perpetuated fear and control over the community. Discovering this at the moment of greatest tension gave the protagonist clarity about the complexity of the past and its direct impact on the present. At that moment, Eleanor's transformation became visible. Before, she was curious and determined. Now she was confident, balancing courage, analysis, and empathy. Her coordinated action, the result of learning, observation, and personal growth, allowed her to control the chaos within the house and at the same time reveal the truth hidden for over a century. The house, perceiving her ability, lessened the commotion, as if recognizing that the secrets would finally be understood and respected. Samuel and Maggie also experienced changes. The sheriff, previously skeptical and controlling, recognized the strength of Eleanor's determination and knowledge, realizing that protecting the town included allowing the truth to emerge. Maggie, who acted as an intellectual guide, had her precautions validated and her collaboration essential to the resolution. Together, they formed a team that balanced rationality, action, and emotional sensitivity, effectively confronting the complexity of the mystery. At dawn, the climax resolved itself with the stabilization of the house. The shadows disappeared, the objects stopped moving, and the charged energy slowly dissipated. Eleanor felt that, although the past remained present in the walls and memories of the Villisca Axe murder house, the revelation had broken patterns of fear and silence, allowing both the town and those involved to breathe more easily. The climax showed that the Villisca Axe murder house was not just a haunted residence, but a catalyst for intergenerational stories, traumas, and secrets. The protagonist's transformation, the partial resolution of the mystery, and the balanced final tension created a moment of emotional and intellectual impact, setting the stage for the narrative's conclusion. As the first light of day streamed through the dusty windows of the Villisca Axe murder house, Eleanor could finally breathe. The tension of the previous night still lingered in the air, but there was a different clarity. The weight of old secrets was beginning to dissipate. The shadows had vanished, the objects still, and the charged energy that had once seemed uncontrollable now subsided. The silence of the house was no longer menacing, but a reminder that the truth had been confronted. The town, still murmuring, began to absorb the consequences of what Eleanor had discovered. Nearby residents, previously suspicious or fearful, now saw in the young investigator a force capable of confronting the past and bringing to light facts that had been suppressed for generations. The revelation of the old diaries and letters provoked shock, but also curiosity and reflection on how past memories and choices shape present reality. Samuel Carter watched the transformation of the town and of Eleanor with a mixture of pride and relief. His own understanding of the tragedy had deepened, and he recognized that protecting the community included allowing the truth to emerge, even if that truth was painful. The sheriff came to fully trust Eleanor's abilities, understanding that courage and empathy can overcome decades of silent fear. Maggie, for her part, felt that her role as mediator and guide had been crucial. Organizing the evidence and contextualizing the story allowed the truth to be presented in a structured way, avoiding hasty interpretations or collective panic. She recognized that knowledge and patience were as powerful as courage and direct action. Eleanor, gazing out the window of the main hallway, realized she had changed profoundly. She was no longer just the curious investigator who had arrived in town. She was someone capable of confronting the unknown, deciphering complex patterns, and balancing courage, analysis, and emotional sensitivity. The experience with the Villisca Axe murder house had transformed her understanding of fear, history, and responsibility. She understood that confronting the mystery meant not only uncovering facts, but honoring the emotional impact on the human lives connected to them. The families involved in the story began to grapple with the truth gradually. Conversations were initiated, old memories were shared, and emotional scars were confronted. While not everyone was ready to fully accept the facts, transparency brought the possibility of reconciliation and understanding. The past, finally exposed, ceased to be an invisible burden, allowing the city to move forward with a clearer conscience and greater respect for the history that the Villisca Axe murder house represented. On a symbolic level, the house remained a silent witness to tragedy and human courage. Eleanor knew that although supernatural phenomena and secrets did not disappear completely, its function was now different. The truth had been confronted, patterns of fear had been challenged, and the cycle of silence and manipulation was beginning to break. The story's conclusion conveyed a sense of balance. The mystery, while not fully resolved in supernatural terms, found an emotional and historical resolution. Eleanor's journey, from initial curiosity to full courage, concluded with growth, learning, and significant impact for all involved. The Villisca axe murder house was still imposing, but now respected and understood, ready for new stories to be told, without the weight of ignorance or silence. Months after the events, the Villisca axe murder house remained silent, but now viewed with respect and thoughtful curiosity. Eleanor published her findings, balancing historical facts and accounts of the manifestations, becoming a reference in the study of haunted houses and collective memories. Samuel continued to watch over the town, now certain that courage and transparency were essential. Maggie maintained her role as guardian of knowledge, guiding future researchers. The town breathed with less fear, but everyone knew that the house held secrets that had not yet been fully revealed, a reminder that some mysteries defy time and human understanding. If you were captivated by the story of the Villisca axe murder house, share your thoughts in the comments and tell us if any part sparked your curiosity or gave you chills. Subscribe to follow more mysterious tales and true stories that defy time and the unknown. Reflect on how the past can influence the present and how the courage to confront mysteries transforms lives. Your participation helps keep fascinating stories alive and explore the secrets hidden in historical places. Don't let the mystery get lost. Get involved, share, and discover more with each new story.